Suzanne Crough appeared in millions of American living rooms, yet she was someone few people truly remembered. In the Partridge Family, she was always there, behind the band, behind the story, behind the lights. Not the main character, no major storyline, and yet, never absent. A quiet presence so constant, it became something taken for granted. And precisely because she was so familiar, when she disappeared, almost no one noticed. There was no sudden turn, no scandal, no farewell, just appearances that grew fewer, and then stopped altogether, as if a door had closed without making a sound. While other faces continued to be remembered, Suzanne Crough slipped out of the very world that had once made her recognizable. Not in a single moment, but through a slow process, long enough for people to forget that they had ever known her. And the rest of her life unfolded off-screen. No script, no applause, no lights. And what makes this story haunting is not the fame, but the way it disappeared. Because before she was ever a familiar face to the entire nation, Suzanne Crough was just a little girl in Southern California, unaware that she would be seen, and then gradually forgotten, right before the eyes of millions. Suzanne J. Crough was born on March 6, 1963 in the city of Fullerton, a quiet community in Orange County, California. Her early years were rooted in the suburbs of Southern California, an area where many middle-class families lived, not far from the entertainment industry hub of Los Angeles. The Crough family was not part of the arts or media world. Her parents, Joseph Wilfred Crough and Ann O'Malley Crough, built a modest life, with no direct ties to Hollywood. After Suzanne was born, the family moved to Anaheim, a city right next to Fullerton. At the time, Anaheim still carried the calm rhythm of a developing residential community. It was a place of tree-lined streets, local schools, and community activities that created a stable childhood environment for many children in the area. Within that setting, Suzanne grew up like an ordinary Southern California girl, showing none of the signs of becoming a face that would appear on national television just a few years later. The Crough family had several children. Suzanne was one of the youngest. Life in a large household created an environment full of energy and constant activity. Family gatherings, conversations among siblings, and children's games became a familiar part of her early life. There were no stage lights, no stories about film sets or scripts. Suzanne's early years unfolded within the framework of a typical family life, something that would later be quite rare among many child actors in Hollywood. From a very young age, Suzanne showed an interest in performing arts. Dance classes and local children's art programs became the first places where she encountered the stage. These were usually small-scale performances, school recitals, community programs, or children's art classes. In those spaces, Suzanne learned how to stand in front of an audience, became familiar with the rhythm of music, and experienced the nervous excitement of stepping into the spotlight. These experiences were not professional, but they helped her develop confidence and expressiveness, two essential qualities for any actor. Gradually, those small performances began to lead to new opportunities. The Crough family recognized that the young girl had a natural presence in front of an audience, and that realization led them to start taking Suzanne to auditions for commercials and television, an approach that was quite common for many children living near the Los Angeles area at the time. The Southern California entertainment industry was always searching for young faces for commercials, television shows, and children's programming. For a girl living in Anaheim, less than an hour's drive from Hollywood, access to such auditions was not out of reach. It was during this period that Suzanne began taking her first steps into the world of television. Not through major roles, but through auditions, rooms where dozens of children lined up, waiting to read a few short lines in front of a camera. The time when Suzanne Crough began attending auditions also coincided with a period of rapid growth in American television. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, major networks such as the American Broadcasting Company, NBC, and CBS were expanding their lineup of family-oriented entertainment programs. Family sitcoms became a popular genre, often centered around the lives of a middle-class household with parents and several children. These shows required a wide range of young actors of different ages to create a sense of familiarity, leading to a sharp increase in demand for child performers in the Los Angeles area. At the same time, television also began integrating musical elements into sitcoms. Producers realized that characters who could both act and perform songs had the potential to attract younger audiences. It was within this context that a new musical sitcom project was developed for ABC, telling the story of a large family forming a band and performing across the United States. The project required a sizable cast of young actors, ranging from teenagers to very young children. In 1970, Suzanne Crough's life took a completely different direction when she was cast as Tracy Partridge in the musical sitcom The Partridge Family. At that moment, Suzanne was still just a young girl living in Anaheim, California, only beginning to attend her first television auditions. But the casting decision for ABC's new series took her from small audition rooms straight into one of the most prominent family television programs of the early 1970s in the United States. In the story of the show, Tracy is the youngest daughter of the Partridge family, a widowed mother and her children who form a band and travel across the United States, performing on a brightly painted bus. Suzanne's character is not the one who leads the story. Tracy often stands behind the band in performance scenes, holding a small tambourine, appearing in simple moments among her older siblings. Yet it is precisely that simplicity that becomes an indispensable part of the Partridge family's image on screen. In the original script, Tracy Partridge was almost written as a minor character. The series mainly revolves around the mother, played by Shirley Jones, along with the older children, especially the character portrayed by David Cassidy. However, when the first episode aired, the audience's reaction created a small but noticeable shift. And many viewers were particularly drawn to the image of the youngest girl in the band, a child who spoke little but was always present in every song, shaking her tambourine with a natural innocence. That response led the producers to keep Tracy appearing throughout the series instead of being just a fleeting character in the early episodes. Within the structure of the Partridge family, Tracy Partridge is not developed as a leading character. She has very few lines, does not participate in the main conflicts, and is not the one who creates turning points in the story. But Tracy appears almost everywhere, within performance scenes, within the family space, within frames where other characters are placed at the center. Her presence does not change the course of events, but it always accompanies it. Tracy is not the one the audience follows, but she is the one they become familiar with. Without needing many lines or standout moments, she maintains a steady position within the entire structure of the series. A position that does not shift, yet is always present. Over time, it is precisely that way of existing that makes the character recognizable. Not because of what Tracy does, but because she is always there within the flow of the story, like an inseparable part of the world that audiences return to each week. In later years, when reflecting on her role, Suzanne Crough once spoke about Tracy's place with striking honesty. She joked that she was very good at being Milli Vanilli, describing her on-screen role as simply playing whatever instrument was put in her hands, from tambourine to triangle or cowbell. That perspective does not diminish Tracy's role. Instead, it clarifies how the character exists within the show. Tracy does not create highlights, does not drive the story, but is always present in every movement of it, like a fixed part of the structure, not prominent, but irreplaceable. Over time, Suzanne Crough gradually became a familiar part of American television. The Partridge Family quickly turned into one of the most successful sitcoms on the American Broadcasting Company. Each week, millions of American families followed the story of the Partridge Family Band, their imagined tours, new songs, and the everyday lives of a large household. The music of the series played a major role in its impact. Songs featured in the show were released as albums and quickly gained popularity on the radio. One of the most famous songs from the series, "I Think I Love You," reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. This success allowed the Partridge Family to move beyond the boundaries of a television sitcom and become a pop culture phenomenon of the early 1970s. During the years 1971 to 1972, and as the Partridge Family entered its most successful period, the cast gradually became familiar faces on American television. The series not only attracted weekly viewers on screen, but also appeared frequently in teen entertainment magazines, where images of the young cast were regularly featured in interviews, behind-the-scenes photos, and stories about life on set. In that context, Suzanne Crough was only about 8 to 9 years old. Although Tracy Partridge was not at the center of the show's storylines, the image of the youngest member of the band, often holding a tambourine during performances, still became a familiar presence for audiences. Tracy's presence brought a sense of completeness to the Partridge Family on screen, gradually making Suzanne recognizable to the public as one of the young faces of early 1970s television. Alongside the weekly broadcast, the cast also participated in many promotional activities for the show. Interviews, television appearances, and youth-oriented programs helped reinforce the Partridge Family's position as one of ABC's most popular sitcoms at the time. Behind the scenes, Suzanne also held a special place within the production team. Thus, according to some members of the crew, she was truly the youngest sibling on set, not only in the script but in real life as well. Many of the older cast members often looked after and protected Suzanne like a younger sister. This sense of closeness made the working environment on set more friendly and secure for her, especially in an industry where many child actors often face pressure at a very early age. It was precisely that atmosphere that allowed Suzanne Crough to go through her early years in the entertainment industry in a relatively stable way, both as part of a successful television show and as someone surrounded by a group that many would later remember as a second family on set. In 1973, Suzanne voiced Tracy in the animated series Goober and the Ghost Chasers, a program produced by Hanna-Barbera. In this series, the character Tracy does not exist as part of the main storyline, but appears in crossover segments, where familiar faces from television are brought into the animated world to meet other characters. This was one of the ways producers expanded the presence of popular shows into new formats, especially targeting young audiences. For Suzanne, voice acting created an environment entirely different from the set of the Partridge Family. There were no cameras or direct co-stars. Everything took place in a recording studio, where the character existed only through voice. Expressions that had once been conveyed through glances or movement now had to be translated into rhythm, pitch, and phrasing. Within that space, Tracy retained her familiar position, not the center of the story, but still present in moments that connected different worlds. The character's presence did not change, only shifted from image to sound, a different form of existence, yet still within the same structure that audiences had come to recognize. By 1974, after 4 consecutive seasons, the Partridge Family came to an end when the American Broadcasting Company decided to stop production. Over 4 years on television, the show aired a total of 96 episodes and gradually became a familiar part of the weekly schedule for many American families in the early 1970s. When the series ended, Suzanne Crough was only 11 years old, Most of her childhood had unfolded alongside the character Tracy Partridge. Not as a fragmented memory, but as a rhythm that repeated with each season, each episode, each appearance before an audience. The end of the show was not only the conclusion of a television series, but also the first time that rhythm was interrupted. For Suzanne, it was not a clearly defined transition, but rather an emptiness that appeared when something that had once repeated so consistently suddenly stopped, while she herself was still in the middle of her childhood. Although the sitcom version ended, the character Tracy continued into a more ambitious project. From 1974 to 1975, Suzanne voiced Tracy in the animated series Partridge Family 2020 AD, where the entire Partridge family was placed in a completely different setting, the distant future of the 23rd century. This change did not erase the familiar structure of the show. The band still performed, still traveled, and still followed the same operational pattern established in the television version. Within that futuristic world, Tracy remained the youngest member of the band, still appearing with her tambourine, an element preserved within a space that had otherwise completely changed. Placing the character in a new setting did not alter Tracy's position. It simply extended her mode of existence into another format. Whether in the present or in an imagined future, Tracy was never the center of the story, but always part of its structure, a steady presence, independent of time or setting. During this same period, Suzanne also participated in segments of the animated compilation program Fred Flintstone and Friends, where many characters from different television series were reintroduced to young audiences. Programs like these demonstrated how production companies leveraged the popularity of successful series to expand their characters into new formats. These animated projects may not have carried the same scale or influence as the original television series, but they held a clear significance. The character Tracy Partridge continued to exist beyond the boundaries of the original show. At a time when the Partridge Family was at the height of its popularity, bringing the characters into spin-off projects, especially animation, allowed the Partridge brand to remain present in popular culture. And within those projects, Suzanne Crough remained the voice behind Tracy, preserving the image of the little girl with the small tambourine as it continued to appear in the memories of young audiences. When the Partridge Family ended in 1974, the American television industry continued moving into a new phase. For Suzanne Crough, it was also the moment when her professional life began to change noticeably. In the years before, the character Tracy Partridge had appeared weekly before millions of viewers. But when the series came to a close, the familiar rhythm of a successful show also stopped, and the path ahead for the young actors in the cast became more uncertain. In the years following the end of the sitcom, Suzanne continued to appear in several television projects, but at a much slower pace compared to her time on The Partridge Family. In 1976, she appeared in the television film Dawn, Portrait of a Teenage Runaway. The film tells the story of a young girl who leaves her family and gradually becomes entangled in the hardships of life on the streets. It was a more serious work, reflecting a broader trend in American television at the time, when TV films began to address more realistic social issues. Suzanne's appearance in the film showed that she was beginning to take part in projects with a more mature tone compared to the gentle world of family sitcoms she had previously been part of. In 1977, Suzanne Crough continued to appear on screen in the series Mulligan's Stew, where she played Stevie Friedman in 7 episodes. This was a program built around an educational entertainment format, with each episode focusing on specific issues in the lives of teenagers, from eating habits and family routines to personal choices in familiar situations. Within the structure of the series, Suzanne's character was not at the center of the story, but existed as part of a group. appearing in shared situations, participating in dialogue, and contributing to the lessons the program aimed to convey. Her performance was no longer tied to musical performances as before, but shifted toward more everyday interactions, where the character was placed in clearly educational scenarios. Although she appeared throughout multiple episodes, Mulligan Stew did not last long and ended after one season. Suzanne's presence in the show, therefore, did not create a strong enough new foundation to replace the position she once held, but rather resembled a transitional phase, where she was still on screen but within a smaller and less prominent structure. In the same year, Suzanne appeared in the special Thanksgiving reunion with the Partridge Family and My Three Sons. No longer part of a regular broadcast cycle, this appearance functioned as a brief return, where the actors were placed back into familiar roles, but within a changed context. There, Tracy Partridge still appeared alongside the family members, still holding her familiar place within the frame. But the feeling of her presence had shifted, and no longer part of an ongoing story, but an image recalled from memory, instantly recognizable, yet no longer belonging to the present of the show. By 1978, Suzanne appeared in an episode of the series Wonder Woman as a guest star. This was one of the shows with a stable audience at the time, with Linda Carter becoming a familiar face on American television screens. Suzanne's appearance in that episode was not part of a continuing arc, but occurred as a brief point of contact within an already established broadcast flow. There was no expansion, nor did it lead to future returns. The role ended with the episode and did not create a further path within the system of shows she was part of. At this point, the shift was no longer simply that Suzanne appeared less frequently, but that her appearances were no longer connected to one another. There was no new series to anchor her, no recurring role to sustain continuity. What remained were isolated points, enough to show that she was still present, but no longer part of a stable trajectory within television. In the same year, Suzanne Crough continued to appear on screen in the television film Teenage Father. This was a short-form television production. I centered on the story of teenagers facing the responsibility of parenthood at a very young age, a social issue that American television began to explore more clearly toward the late 1970s. Unlike long-running series, Teenage Father was structured as a self-contained story, where characters existed only within the limited duration of the script. For Suzanne, participating in this type of project meant entering an environment where her presence no longer extended across seasons or episodes, but was confined to a single appearance. The film was later recognized with an Academy Award for Best Live-Action Short Film for director Taylor Hackford, giving the project a notable place within the television landscape of the time. But for Suzanne, this participation did not open a clearly defined next path, instead existing as an independent appearance, separate from the continuous chains of roles she had once been part of. Suzanne's participation in the film took place at a time when her career had entered a different phase compared to the early years of the Partridge Family. If in the early 1970s, the image of Tracy Partridge had made her a familiar face on American television, then by the end of that decade, Suzanne's roles appeared less frequently and were often part of standalone television projects. As this period reflects a reality that was quite common for many child actors in Hollywood. When a popular television show ends, young faces who were once closely associated with a familiar character often have to find ways to redefine their image. Audiences still remember them in their old roles, while the television industry is constantly searching for new faces for upcoming projects. For Suzanne Crough, roles such as those in Teenage Father show that she continued working in the entertainment industry and explored different television projects after the end of the well-known sitcom. However, the roles during this period were no longer tied to a long-running series as before. Instead, they reflect a phase of searching for a new direction in her career, when an actress who had become famous at a very young age began to move through her teenage years and face different choices for the path ahead. By 1980, Suzanne Crough appeared in the television film Children of Divorce, where she took on the role of Kate. This was a television project centered on the upheaval within family life when parents divorce, and the impact of that breakdown on children. And unlike the light atmosphere of the family sitcoms that had first brought Suzanne to audiences, this film placed young characters in more emotionally complex situations, where they had to confront changes within their families and an early sense of maturity. Suzanne's participation in Children of Divorce came as she had entered her teenage years, at a time when many American child actors faced a critical turning point in their careers. In this film, the role of Kate was not a central one, but it showed that Suzanne was still appearing on screen in television projects with more social themes compared to the familiar entertainment programs of the previous decade. However, Children of Divorce also marked Suzanne Crough's final appearance on screen. After this project, she did not continue to participate in any further television films or series. Her acting career, beginning at a very young age with the role of Tracy Partridge in the Partridge Family, came to a quiet close in the early 1980s. For audiences who had grown up with the Partridge Family television show, Suzanne's departure from the entertainment industry happened quite quietly. There was no major announcement, no farewell event. It was simply that after her role in Children of Divorce, she gradually stepped away from the world of television, closing a chapter of her life that had been connected to film sets since she was a child. After leaving acting behind, Suzanne Crough's life gradually moved into an entirely different rhythm. And the mid-1980s marked a period when she was no longer connected to film sets or television projects. This departure did not occur as a sudden decision, but unfolded over time, until her life was no longer linked to the entertainment world at all. Between 1985 and 1993, Suzanne owned and operated a bookstore. This work placed her in an environment completely different from Hollywood. Instead of filming schedules, scripts, and casting calls, her daily life revolved around managing the store, interacting with customers, and maintaining a space for people within her local community. For those who had once known Suzanne through the Partridge Family, this change was often seen as a turning point. But what stands out is not the difference between those two worlds, but the fact that Suzanne did not return to the old one. While many child actors continue trying to maintain their presence as they grow older, she did not expand on her former image, nor did she position her life in connection with that past anymore. After leaving the world of television, that Suzanne Crough's life gradually moved into a completely different rhythm from the childhood years she had spent on film sets. In the memory of audiences, she remained the little girl Tracy Partridge, holding a small tambourine in the band of the Partridge Family, appearing each week on American television screens. But as the lights of the show slowly faded, Suzanne's real life did not continue along the path many had imagined. Instead of trying to remain within the entertainment world, she gradually stepped away from Hollywood and built an entirely different life, quieter, more private, and centered on family. In July 1985, Suzanne married William Condrey. This marriage took place after she had left acting, at a time when her life was entering a more stable phase. There were no lavish ceremonies or major media attention. Suzanne's wedding was held quite privately. That, too, reflected the way she chose to live in the years after leaving television, staying away from public noise and keeping her personal life at a certain distance from the press. Her marriage to William Condrey became the foundation for most of Suzanne's adult life. Over the following decades, the two maintained a relatively stable family life, something not always common for those who had experienced fame in childhood. While many Hollywood child actors struggled with the pressures of fame as they grew older, Suzanne appeared to choose a different path, stepping away from the spotlight to build a more ordinary life. After getting married, Suzanne and her husband had 2 daughters, and from that point on, her life revolved around family more than anything else. The years once tied to filming schedules, recording studios, and television programs gave way to the familiar rhythm of family life, raising children, maintaining a household, and living within her local community. Those who had once known Suzanne through television might still remember Tracy Partridge, but in real life, her most important role had become that of a mother. What is notable is that Suzanne did not attempt to maintain a celebrity image after leaving the entertainment industry. She rarely appeared in public and did not seek a return to Hollywood. Instead, she chose a relatively private life. For many years, she focused on her family and everyday responsibilities, distancing herself from the pace of the entertainment industry that had once been part of her childhood. According to those who knew her later in life, Suzanne Crough was remembered as a warm and down-to-earth person. People close to her often spoke of her first and foremost as a devoted mother and wife, rather than as a former television actress who had once been well known. This creates a particularly striking contrast in Suzanne's life story. While millions of viewers remember her as a figure of early 1970s pop culture, most of her later years unfolded in a very ordinary setting, almost entirely separate from the entertainment world. That choice gave Suzanne Crough's life a different tone compared to many child actors of her time. There were no major scandals, no public controversies, no shocking headlines. Instead, there was a relatively stable life sustained over many years, one centered on family and private relationships. In a Hollywood context often associated with dramatic upheavals, that kind of quiet stability could itself become something rare. For that reason, when looking back at Suzanne Crough's entire journey, her story is not defined only by her childhood years on television. The years that followed, when she built a family, raised her children, and lived a private life, make up the longest part of that journey. If Suzanne's childhood unfolded before millions of viewers, then most of her adult life took place in a very different world, one where the stage lights had receded, giving way to roles that were simpler yet deeper, the roles of a wife and a mother. After many years away from the entertainment world, Suzanne Crough's life unfolded quietly and steadily. The image of the little girl Tracy Partridge, who once appeared weekly on American television screens, gradually became a memory of popular culture, while her real life continued in the rhythm of ordinary routines. And Suzanne did not return to Hollywood, nor did she try to maintain a public presence. Instead, she lived within her community, worked, and devoted most of her time to her family. In a reunion interview of the Partridge Family cast on the Today Show in 2010, Suzanne shared that she was working as a manager at an Office Max store in Bullhead City, Arizona. This information surprised many viewers. To them, Suzanne was still the youngest girl of the Partridge family, the one who stood behind the band with a tambourine during performance scenes. But her later life had taken a very different course. Instead of continuing the path of a television star, Suzanne lived like many others in her community, going to work each day, caring for her family, and maintaining a private life not tied to the spotlight. In the years that followed, Suzanne lived primarily in Laughlin, Nevada with her family. Her life was no longer connected to television projects or entertainment events. Yet the memories of the Partridge Family era remained in the minds of audiences, but for Suzanne, that period had become part of the past. Her present life focused on family and personal relationships, continuing the ordinary rhythm she had chosen many years earlier. On April 27, 2015, Suzanne Crough's life came to an unexpected end at her home in Laughlin, Nevada. She was only 52 years old, an age when many people are still in some of the most stable years of their lives. According to authorities, Suzanne was found seated at her dining table at home. There were no signs of violence or any suspicious factors. Everything happened quietly, almost within an ordinary moment of daily life, an afternoon like any other, within the very family space she had spent most of her adult life building. Initially, local police described the incident simply as a medical event. But the autopsy later revealed the cause to be arrhythmogenic right ventricular dysplasia, ARVD, a rare form of heart disease. This condition causes the muscle cells in the right ventricle to gradually be replaced by fatty or scar tissue, and leading to dangerous heart rhythm disturbances. In many cases, ARVD can progress silently for years before resulting in sudden cardiac events. Suzanne Crough's passing left many of her former colleagues from the Partridge Family in shock. In their memories, Suzanne was still the youngest girl of the Partridge Family, the child who stood behind the band with a small tambourine, smiling among the pop melodies of the early 1970s. Danny Bonaduce, who had worked alongside her in the series, said that many had once thought he would be the first among the Partridge cast to pass away. But in the end, it was the little girl, Tracy Partridge, who left first. Suzanne's death carries a very particular kind of tragedy. She had entered the lives of millions of American families as a child, yet most of her adult life unfolded in quietness, almost separate from the spotlight. And when that life came to an end, it happened in much the same way, without noise, without drama, and simply in the quiet space of her home. For many viewers, the image of Suzanne Crough remains frozen in the early 1970s, a little girl in the Partridge Family band standing behind the stage with a tambourine in her hand. Much time has passed since those episodes, but the memory of Tracy Partridge still remains. And so, when Suzanne Crough passed away at the age of 52, many felt as though a small part of American television memory had quietly closed along with her. When looking back at Suzanne Crough's life, what remains is not the number of roles or the loud milestones of a career. What remains is a very specific image, small yet enduring over time. It is the image of a little girl standing behind a family band in the Partridge Family, holding a tambourine, speaking little, never occupying the center of the frame, yet always present in every moment. In the memory of many viewers, that image is tied to a period when family television carried a slower, warmer rhythm. Episodes aired in the evening, pop melodies played from the television in the living room, and an on-screen family in which viewers could recognize a part of themselves. Suzanne was not the one telling the story in those episodes, but the presence of Tracy helped make that story feel complete, like a small but essential piece. What is striking is that Suzanne's life afterward did not continue along the path that image might suggest. She did not become a major adult star, nor did she remain long within the entertainment industry. Instead, she chose an ordinary life, a choice that almost ran counter to what audiences might have imagined for familiar television faces. It is precisely that departure that creates a different feeling. The image of Tracy Partridge seems preserved in memory, unchanged by time or later roles. When people speak of Suzanne Crough, they do not only remember an actress who once appeared on screen. They remember a feeling, the feeling of a past era of television, of simple family stories, and of characters who did not need to stand at the center to become an inseparable part of the audience's memory. And perhaps that is how a small image can endure. Not through noise or grand milestones, but by quietly remaining in the memory of viewers as if it had never truly left.